gonna try to see if we can go live on Facebook, so bear with us a minute. Bill's having a heart attack.
Gonna work out.
Our nervous Nelly. Okay, let's see. I think we're live on Facebook.
Yeah, I show it as live.
And let me go back to our Zoom meeting. Wow, look, we got such a great group coming on. Courtney's on. She's our speaker next week. She isn't showing her face yet, but that's okay. We got Coach Billingsley. He's our favorite coach, high school principal, superintendent now.
Except he went to Wake Forest. That is a problem.
Yeah, we'll forgive him for
and
playing.
played football.
We'll forgive him for that. And there's Daryl. You always end up, Daryl Massio, you end up in the middle of my screen every week. So you just want to show off that beard right there.
Lucky.
Spot in advance.
Yeah. We got Elias from Brazil.
Adam Atkins.
Adam Stewart from Lake Placid. We got people from all over.
Hadley from Bali.
Yeah, Hadley from Bali at midnight. Y'all, she gets the award for staying up the latest for everything.
John Hadley.
Yep, go Hadley. Awesome. Okay, well, why don't we, Josh, why don't you get us
Yes. All right, guys, welcome. It is June 8th. Can you believe it? Getting into the summer already. Hope you guys are having a good time. We've got a great episode here today, so I want to get started right away. Just a few housekeeping notes, as always. So if you have any questions, any thoughts, any comments, any dedications, please throw them into the chat throughout our time here so we can read those at the end or interject as needed. Also, you can find today's call and all the other Intrepid Spirits calls on our Facebook page. So go there, please, and connect with our friends here on the call and see anything from past weeks. And of course, if there are any questions or comments, send them to us via Facebook or here, and we'll be glad to help you out. And please do share this around with your network as you feel that it could help them. We'd love to grow the network, and I think the next few weeks are going to be very, very good as far as guests and messaging and etc. So with that said, Susan, over to you and Dill, and let's get started.
Awesome. Okay.
All right, hey,
Bill, you want to go?
welcome back to the Intrepid Spirits Huddle. I see some new folks here, and you're welcome. We're happy to have you aboard. The newbies will find out this every time I do the same thing, people. The sea is dangerous, its storms are terrible. But this is never sufficient reason to remain ashore. Unlike timid souls, intrepid spirits seek victory over the impossible. It is with an iron will that they embark on the most daring adventures to meet the shadowy future without fear and conquer the unknown. And as we all know, what we're heading into now is kind of like that shadowy future, and we're all excited about it. Real quick, I want to touch on two things. One, our mission, and I would love that feedback from anybody on this, but our mission's been to add value to people's lives through entertaining, thought-provoking content. And I know we've had some good ones, but the next 2 weeks, I think, are going to be very, very special. You know, today, we're going to, more than ever, we believe as a group, we can get into a conversation of positive change. There needs to be a really hard conversations, right? On how we help our Black community and the white community come together. For that matter, it's every community and culture globally coming together, and we all need to start to do the right thing. With that, I'm going to pass it off to Susu to introduce Kristoff. I will say this, that Kristoff is a young man that we taught at ABAC. He's one of our most special students, and when he came on Carry the Load, he actually got nicknamed the Governor. He's a special guy, and I can't wait to hear your story, Kristoff. Sunshine, take it away.
So we're really excited to have Kristoff with us. For you guys that know Dill and myself, Kristoff actually was a student at ABAC, and then when he graduated, he spent the next year working with Dill as his executive assistant. And it happened to be the year that I abandoned Dill at ABAC and went to work with Cetera. So Kristoff is probably one of the very few people that I've seen besides myself that can manage Dill. And he did an amazing job at it. So right there, that makes Kristoff pretty special. So Kristoff, he went and worked for the president of a local hospital, and now he in Moultrie, Georgia, and now he is leading up an initiative to have mental health care for rural communities in the South Georgia area. And then he's also started a nonprofit. And so I haven't given any justice to what those things really are. So I thought what I'd do is, Kristoff, why don't you give us a little bit of background about yourself, who you are, where you grew up, where you're from, and what you're doing now, and then we can go right into some of the things that we discussed the other day about the conversation.
Absolutely, guys. Thank you so much. I just want to first say thank you for having me on today. It's such a pleasure to be here. My name is Kristoff Cohran. I'm living in Moultrie, Georgia right now. I call Thomasville, Georgia my home. During the day, I call it my day job, I work at the hospital as the program administrator for a psychiatry residency program. We're building a mental health pipeline of mental health professionals for rural areas across the country. I also run a nonprofit called Mission 3E. It's a transformative minority-focused experience, and we're aimed at creating critical thinkers that will become tomorrow's pioneers. A little bit brief history and background about myself. I'm 27 and I've lived most of my young life feeling inadequate. I grew up like most Black boys with a single mother who did everything possible to make sure my life was one of prosperity and opportunity. We were very poor, and I lost my father when I was a young boy, probably about 7 or 8. And, that forced me to mature quickly. And I lost out on seeing what being a man meant in this world. I missed out on having a good male role model at home. I missed out on things that I'll never get back, experiences I'll never get to live growing up as a small boy. So my dad was biracial and lived a very hard life because of it. There's a whole side of my family that I know nothing about due to racism. I grew up going to an all-white Christian school when I was very young, when he was alive. And it's there where I experienced what opportunity looked like firsthand, what privilege looked like. My parents spent every dime they had on a good education for me when he was alive. When my dad died, I ended up going to an all-Black school in a small town in South Carolina. And I remember it had bullet holes in the cafeteria doors where there was a shootout. I remember the food was just as unhealthy as you can possibly get. The kids were not challenged at all. As a matter of fact, my reading level was so high compared to my peers, I was often bored in all of my classes. My little sister, I remember her crying every single day she would come home from that school. She just hated it. I hated it. We all hated it. The school had no funding. It had no resources. It couldn't afford good teachers. We didn't have anything. And as I looked at the teachers and everything I was around in that town, I didn't see anything to aspire to. I didn't see anything that I wanted to become. Fast forward a bit and we moved, and I ended up going to a school that had some diversity in it, some funding, some resources. It seemed like the community and the state actually cared about what type of educational system it was providing for the children in that town. There you could find opportunity. But if you didn't have the right white connections, your odds of being successful were quite low. And fortunately for me, I always have sought after mentorship. I've never been afraid to ask for help. And I've always wanted fulfillment, a sense of freedom and significance in life. I've worked extremely hard to build a good reputation for myself. But no matter what I've done for myself, I've always found the need that I needed someone white to get me from point A to point B. And at a very young age, I learned through experience that being Black meant that before people got to know me for me, they saw the color of my skin and immediately formed their own opinion of me. Instead of me trying to make a good first impression, My job was first to combat their preconceived, stereotypical perception of who I might be. And whether you call it implicit bias or not, I believe that people judge you first on what you look like, second on where you're from, third on how you speak, and then fourth on your merit. We talk about George Floyd's death and what kind of effect that has on people. You know, for me, it's kind of another reminder that equality has just never existed in this country. What I see on the news and on social media is Black people getting murdered and the people behind it suffering little to no consequences. I see Black people put behind bars for carrying a bag of weed and white people suspended for their job for murdering someone. I believe that laws do not change hearts, just doesn't. And a system that was never built for minority success, it cannot be broken by violence. Look, guys, there's a wildfire in this country right now that needs to be extinguished. When I hear someone say, I do not see color, I feel as though what they're really saying is I refuse to acknowledge the racism and discrimination that is so prevalent around me. Privilege is when you think something is not a problem because it's not a problem for you personally. I could ask 100 Black people in a room to tell me about a time when they were racially profiled, and 97 of them will have stories to tell, several stories to tell. I have several stories to tell. We've got to start treating everyone with love, dignity, and respect. We have to see color as it is and embrace our differences. Diversity is a very beautiful thing that we have yet to experience fully in all of its greatness. You know, what do I want people in general to know about the Black experience in America? And I've been asked that question by several people over these last couple of weeks. And I'll take a moment to share two very brief stories with you, because the world I live in is so drastically different than the world a white person lives in. Back in 2011, I was on my way to Dallas, Texas for a music lesson. It was from a internationally renowned trumpet player, and I saved up about $600 over a course of months doing, you know, odd jobs to save up for it. And I got two of my buddies to ride with me because it's about, 17 hours from Tifton, Georgia at that time to Dallas, Texas. So it was about 2 or 3 a.m. in the morning, and my music lesson was about 10 a.m. that morning. So we would have just had a couple hours to sleep. I was literally 30 seconds away from pulling in the driveway of the hotel we were staying at, and a police officer pulled us over. And I could see in my side view mirror that his hand was firmly placed on his gun as he approached the vehicle very slowly while he flashed his flashlight through the back of my window, looking all throughout the car. He came to my window and rudely said, you know, what are you boys doing here? And I answered him as politely as I possibly could and said, you know, I'm here for a trumpet lesson. It's at 10 o'clock this morning. And then he says, yeah, right. And asked to see all 3 of our driver licenses. Now, I'm a lot more reserved and conservative than most people. So my roommate in the backseat got very upset because as he was asking us these questions, he was steadily flashing his light all throughout our car like he was looking for something. And my roommate in the backseat said, why do you need to see my driver license? I'm back here taking a nap and I'm not driving. And he said, look, I asked for your driver's license. We can either do this the hard way or the easy way. So I said, look, man, come on, just give the officer your driver's license. Let's get out of here. So he gives him the license. We all give it to him. He looked at our licenses and he says, so you boys are from Georgia and you expect me to believe you came all this way for a music lesson? I said, yes, sir. I mean, that's the only reason why we came. So then he goes to his car and he sat in there for what felt like forever. And I'm sure he was looking at all of our criminal histories, probably looking at the tag of our vehicle. He was in there for at least 20 to 30 minutes. Now, keep in mind, we'd just driven 17 hours. I was exhausted. I needed to get up in about 6 or so hours for this music lesson. And he was just taking his time. So then he comes back to the vehicle. And he came back, he gave us our licenses, and then he says, I'll be watching you guys, stay out of trouble. So we get to our hotel, and as you can imagine, we're all under the age of 20. I was probably 19 at the time, 18 or 19. And I don't smoke, I don't drink, I don't do any of that stuff. I'm about as boring as you can possibly get. with recreational type stuff. And for me to be profiled, and that wasn't the first instance, but that's probably the first instance I actually witnessed an officer hold his gun and for some reason feel threatened by me. I'm about as nice as you can possibly get for a person in general. And that I couldn't even sleep that night. The other two went to sleep, but I just stayed up thinking to myself, you know, I could have been a casualty for coming up here for a music lesson. Even more recently, last summer, my wife, right here in the community that we live in, was arrested and taken to jail on her way to work. You know, my wife is a BSN RN. She's a registered nurse. She was on a contract and she was on her way to work. It was probably about 7:30 or so in the morning. I'm at Chick-fil-A getting ready to go to work for my job, trying to sneak me in a chicken biscuit. You know, back then I was trying to be healthy, but I would stop by Chick-fil-A and get me a chicken biscuit without my wife knowing. And she calls me about 7:30 from an unknown number. And usually I don't pick up unknown numbers, but at that particular time, I just felt something in me that I needed to pick it up. I answered it. My wife was just crying profusely on the other end of the phone. I could barely understand what she was saying. But she was saying I needed to get her out. And I said, get you out of where? Where are you? She then told me, I'm in jail and you need to come get me. I don't know what I'm doing here. So to make a long story short, my wife was racially profiled on her way to work. She was on her way to work, wasn't doing anything wrong, driving the speed limit. Everything was perfectly fine. She tells me after this event that she pulled into this small town. She was going through it, going the speed limit, and she made eye contact with an officer in a truck. She just felt something in her gut that he was going to follow her. So he gets in his truck, comes behind her, pulls her over, and taps on her window. So first he slowly comes to the car, taps on her window, tells her to put her window all the way down. He says, do you know why I stopped you? She says, no, I don't. How can I help you? He says, I'm pulling you over because you're driving without insurance. So she goes, we do have insurance. I know we have insurance because my husband actually just called me a couple of days ago asking if I was okay with switching companies. She goes, well, let me show you our insurance card. But he says, that's not necessary. I'm showing that you don't have any insurance. I'm going to need to see your license. So she gives him his license. He looks at it right there at the vehicle. And then he tells her, I'm going to need you to step out of the car. Now, my wife isn't as reserved as I am. So she starts questioning him, you know, first off, you won't let me show you my insurance card. Secondly, why are you asking me to step out of my car? I don't see any reason for me to get out. Again, he goes, you can either make this the hard way or the difficult way. I'm going to need you to step out of your car right now, ma'am, because I'm taking you to jail. And she goes, what am I going to jail for? I've got to go to work. So he gets her out of her car, handcuffs her, throws her in the back of his truck. Then he goes back to her vehicle, searches her purse, her work bag, up under the seats, pops the trunk, and searches the whole vehicle. Now, during this time, she's crying in the truck. And now I'm no law enforcement expert, so I could be wrong. But if someone pulls you over for lack of insurance, I don't see any reason that they would need to search your vehicle. And I don't see how someone would know you don't have insurance when he makes eye contact with her and then immediately goes to go pull her over. That doesn't make sense to me. Now, he took her to jail. She gets to jail and the police department has some black officers in it. And they're asking her while she's taking a mug shot, why are you in here? And she says, well, he pulled me over for lack of insurance, but I know I have insurance. And they tell her at the police department, he does this all the time. He brings all types of people in here for no insurance or petty stuff. He just likes arresting black people. Now, long story short for that, I ended up calling one of my mentors, my boss at the time, and having the right white connections, I was able to resolve that issue within the day. But imagine if I didn't have those connections. Imagine what would have happened to my wife's career or her record if I didn't have the right white connection to make the phone call, not only to that police department, but to the judge in that community to make sure nothing was shown on her record. You know, think about her career and what that would have done to her. Think about the feeling she had to have to call her supervisor back, who was blowing her phone up as to why she hadn't shown up to work yet. And I wasn't able to get her out of jail until about 4 o'clock that afternoon. Imagine what that felt like to go back to work the next day and have to tell people, why weren't you at work yesterday? What happened? You know, what lie did you tell at that point to keep people from, one, getting to your business, and two, from feeling embarrassed? And all she was trying to do was get to work. My wife could have been one white contact away from being a Sandra Bland. You know, I'm one white contact away from being a Ahmaud Arbery, who just went into a house to see what it looked like and was on a jog. I do that. I used to ride my bike all the time coming up and go into nice neighborhoods and look in houses, because not to steal anything, but to go in there and look at what one day I could potentially live in, to dream, to actually visually see something. You know, people talk about making a vision board. Well, I was physically making a vision board in my head, looking at these nice houses. And I felt uncomfortable during those times going into neighborhoods. And it's not because I was a criminal or anything, but it's because of the way I looked. Now, what I'm saying right now is I'm afraid to live in this country because justice seems not to exist for Black people. It seems we fill the cells of prisons across the country for petty things, but a white man can murder you and suffer no consequence. Black kids today are seeing people that look just like them be murdered on national television. They are seeing our justice system fail us. You learn who people are by what they do, not by what they say. And kids today are witnessing a system that is supposed to be of the people, by the people, and for the people, work only to the benefit of white people. So where do we go from here? I believe that there is an opportunity right now. There is hope and promise in this chaos. We have an opportunity right now to take bold action that will impact society for generations to come. We've got to let this time be the wrinkle in history that we open our eyes and correct the injustices of this country. We've got to come together and love one another. Let us remember what John 15:12 tells us. It says, "This is my commandment, that ye love one another as I have loved you." And how did Jesus love us? Quite frankly, he did it unconditionally. How can you love someone you do not know? So right now, we need our white brothers and sisters more than ever before to stand with us against hate, bigotry, and the systematic discrimination that has plagued this world since man's fall in the Garden of Eden. There needs to be a war on racism. We are better than this, and we can do better than this. All people need to be deliberate about supporting and loving one another, embracing one another. Let's be deliberate about first seeking to understand what is being said and then seek to be understood. My challenge for our nation right now is to begin to have meaningful conversations that yield a plan of action that rights wrongs and breaks barriers. Black people cannot win this war alone. We need support. We need to know that you are on our side. We need to know that you care. We need justice. The band-aids we keep putting on internal issues in this country are and always will be temporary. That's why we keep having these things happen. We have to fix the problem causing us to need a band-aid in the first place. So I've spent a lot of time chatting here, and I'll end my rant the way we started this thing by saying the sea is dangerous and its storms terrible, but these obstacles have never been sufficient reason to remain ashore. Unlike the mediocre, intrepid spirits seek victory over those things that seem impossible. It is with an iron will that they will embark on the most daring of all endeavors, to meet the shadowy future without fear and conquer the unknown. Now is the time to boldly stand together and relentlessly fight for change.
Oh, unbelievable, my friend.
Yeah, thank you so much, Kristoff.
You got questions, Josh?
Very thoughtful. I've got to have some questions. We got any questions? Comments?
Yeah, we've got one coming in from Thomas Grant here, and I think Kristoff, I think I'll speak for the group when I say thank you. It's good to listen and hear, I think, from your point of view. And from Thomas here, powerful stories. Can you reflect on the differences between the three kinds of schools you attended? Mostly white Christian schools, poor all Black public schools, and diverse schools. How did they shape you and shape you differently?
Well, I'll be very honest, and I tell people this all the time. The all-white Christian school I went to created the person you see today. the fundamentals that I have, my morals, my beliefs, all started from that particular school. I mean, that school had a chef. It taught us about how to eat right. It taught us how to be upstanding citizens in our communities. It taught us how to be empathetic towards people. It taught us how to critically think. You know, I don't care that someone has a different opinion than I have. What I do care about is your opinion deeply grounded in research and heavy thought. Have you thought it out well? Are you a critical thinker? We can have differences of opinion, but I can respect someone that can critically think. Now, when I went to the all-black school, it had no funding. The teachers didn't quite care, or maybe they did, but they didn't have the resources to care about what we learned, what we wanted to become in life. They were there to do a job, and it was very evident every single day. When I went to the diverse school, I was in a community that was very well funded, and schools are funded by, you know, the taxes you get on property, so property taxes. So if you live in an impoverished area, you're not going to have resources and funding. You're not going to be challenged in that way. So I think that the school environment, because we have to realize kids become themselves, they're at school more than they're at home. So schooling plays a significant role in the development of a person. And I just thank God I had that opportunity to see those differences, but to fundamentally be created in a good school system in the beginning.
Okay, Josh, any other, I think we've got some comments here. Oh yeah, we've got a question from Melinda.
Yeah, so great comment from Tim. Thank you. Kristoff, I hope you can read these. These are some great things coming in. A question quickly from Melinda, and I had the same one, Melinda. Thanks for asking. I think, you know, there's a lot of us on the call that are consciously wondering what concrete steps or actions can we do to help? What would you suggest? What advice can you give those who want to help but don't know what to do?
Well, I think that's an excellent question, and we have to start looking at meaningful actions to take. I think one thing that we can do is stop having two-sided conversations and come together like we're doing today and have meaningful, well-thought-out conversations. To be heard, to be understood. The only reason people feel uncomfortable with conversations like this is because you feel the need to defend yourself. If we really all get into a room as a community, I think communities need to have these conversations together. Instead of the police force going into Black communities to, you know, serve the law and police, why not build relationships with those kids? Most of those kids join gangs because they want to feel wanted, they want to feel loved, they want to feel a part of something. Why don't police officers begin to form relationships with children and show them that there is a better way? We can keep these kids out of the jail system. We can stop these things. And I think that having those conversations and having them with the intent to come out with an action plan of what we can do today to change these things. We can't depend on politicians to do it. We can't vote our way to breaking the system that doesn't exist to help us. We have to start within our communities, and we have to look within ourselves to have these sorts of conversations with one another.
Amen.
I think we had another question, right, Josh? Yeah, let's do one more question,
One more
and then
question,
we'll go from there.
One more from Devontae Hunt. Kristoff, what's your opinion on the approach protesters have taken in response to this global outcry? So other than unanimous collaboration, what individual practices can a person do to add to the meaning of the protest we're seeing?
Well, one, you have to show up. And two, you know, the protests, most of which are very cordial, very peaceful. But let's look back for a moment and look at what Colin Kaepernick did. He was very peaceful in his protest. He kneeled, and that's it. He just kneeled, and he lost his job. He was blackballed for a long time. He still didn't have a career in the NFL. Think about the millions of dollars he lost standing up for justice for people that needs it. We need more people that way. Think about if more people stood behind Colin at a time, and the NFL is like 70-something% Black. That's your people. But that right there told me, looking from the outside in, that we care more about entertainment than we do people's lives. We care more about, you know, ticket sales and playing football than we do about justice for people. We need Black and white people to stand together and say, this isn't right. People's lives on national television dying and the culprits not getting any consequences is not justice. And we cannot stand to live in a country where that's true. So we have to continue to have peaceful protests. And the way you can add into that is just show up. Even if you don't know what to say, even if you don't know what to do there, showing up and showing that you at least want to be a part of the change means a lot.
Great, thanks. I think we have some more questions, but what we'll do is we'll get those and then we'll get with Kristoff and we'll post the answers on the Intrepid Spirits Facebook page. And then Dylan's gonna close us out. But Kristoff, thank you.
Oh,
Thank you.
We truly think he has the nickname Governor for a reason. So
well,
maybe he can
well,
be one
we've
of
already
our.
got one of our guys tasted it and said we were listening to the next president of the United States someday. But okay, I'm gonna quickly, because I'm trying to be respectful.
But he'll do it without having to bow down to all the special interests and all that stuff. He'll be our great politician.
So,
all right.
so to finish, because always respectful for the half hour. This could go on, and I can't wait for Courtney next week to give us the women's perspective on this. Quickly, Emmanuel, I think it's right name, Acho, A-C-H-O. He has a YouTube on uncomfortable conversations with a black man. It's phenomenal. And then from a thought starter perspective, I would say this, Kristoff. You can never direct the wind, but you can always adjust to it. And what we need to do right now is we need to put our big boy pants on and have a little adjustment to the wind. And I forget who asked the question about what we could do, but to me, if we all go out to 10 people and get a dialogue going, in 6 months, this group could have helped to be part of that positive human energy movement to get this country and this world, quite frankly, going in the right direction. I guess I'll just finish with the dedication. I think has got to be to the Floyd family and just all the families and the I guess underserved people in this country and in the world, actually. And my prayer for everybody is just, let's make a positive difference in people's lives. It's not that hard. When you see somebody in a Walmart parking lot, help them get their groceries in their car. Yeah, it's the little things that it blows your mind. I did the other day, I've had 6 people walk out and say, Jill, what the heck were you doing in the Walmart parking lot? I said, I was helping people. That's what we're supposed to do. Anyway, end the day. Thank you for everyone being on board. Kristoff,
Thank you so
phenomenal. Courtney, we can't wait till next week. Just a little pressure. Hip, hip, hooray!
Hooray!
Hip, hooray!
Hooray!
Hip, hip, hooray!
Hooray!
Stay low, keep moving. Let's go.
You guys.